Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Today we got some busts.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome on in to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. What is poppin', Rick?
What's up?
Today,
Football's starting soon.
Football is starting very soon. It's August 12th, and we have just a short amount of time. I think it's 29 days until the first Thursday night football game of the year. Chiefs, who are they playing?
Texans.
That's a good game, my friend.
It is.
So Chiefs playing the Texans. It should be interesting, but that's just 29 days away. So we are inching closer to the NFL season. We are inching closer to fantasy football drafts. We are inching closer to literally every portion of my favorite season is fall. My favorite holidays are in fall. My favorite sport is in fall. So fall is just an all time. And my wardrobes, I wear a fall wardrobe in the summertime.
Both our birthdays are in fall.
That's what I'm saying, dude. It's the greatest time of year.
It is.
So we got some running back and breakout busts. We already did breakout for the running backs. We got running back and wide receiver busts for this episode. Before we jump into that, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps, on Instagram @TheFantasyChampions. You can like us at Facebook.com/TheFantasyChampions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform, be sure to leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications when we post a video, and be sure to like and comment down below. Rick, tell them what the draft guide is.
Guys, you haven't got the draft guide yet.
You got to comp the draft guide, dude.
You got to get out yourself a copy of one of these things, guys. They're $25. The guide is live. We got full rankings, breakouts, busts, player draft values, player breakdowns, and so much more. And if you guys order now, you'll be entered in a chance to be in our listener league.
I believe we're going to make next week the final week of doing this, and then
that's your call, not mine. So,
hey,
whatever you say is law.
Whatever, whatever you say is law. I like that. Let's jump right into our busts. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to give a bust for the running back position. Rick is going to give a bust for the running back position, and then we'll do the same thing with wide receivers, and we'll discuss. And then we have a little segment to end the show. But let's jump right into the running back busts. You can also, by the way, buy our draft guide, as we mentioned above, and get the rest of our breakouts and busts in there. Very helpful information for your drafts for the 2020 season. So let's start with your bust. I will do this for the entire show. Just make sure I say breakout instead of bust. What is your bust for the 2020 season at the running back position?
I don't know if you agree with this. And I think not a lot of people are on the same train with me. So I'll try to make my argument, but I have Chris Carson as my bust.
Okay.
Reason being is, for one, his ADP is a little high. He's in the mock draft that we did in our last show. He was the first player, I believe, off in the third round. So he was top of the third round. I've seen him go about there in most mock drafts, ahead of guys like he went ahead of Austin Eckler in our last draft. Yeah. Ahead of guys like Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette, some guys like that, which I don't think he should be ahead of. And I'll tell you why. Last year he was starting to lose his job. Not necessarily lose his job, but him and Rashad Penny were starting to split carries. And Penny was actually getting the majority of them. There was multiple times last season where he had fumbles in games, and there was talks about him losing his job. Yeah. And then Penny would get injured, or Carson would have a big week and he'd take it back. But all season he was on the fence of losing his job. And then at the end of the season, Penny looked like he finally took the job, but then he got hurt, and he will miss the first 2 games of the season this year, but he will come back. And when Penny comes back, I think they are going to split, and I eventually think Penny might even take over the job. And even when Penny is not there, I think Chris Carson will be solid. Yeah. But Carlos Hyde is there. They did bring in Carlos Hyde, and he's going to get some work.
Mm-hmm.
They drafted DJ Dallas in the 4th round.
Yeah.
He's going to get and he's not going to take a crazy amount of work, but he might get some carries. So you add all those factors, and they're going to have 4 running backs by like week 5, week 6, and they're going to use all 4 of those guys.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of Chris Carson because of that. And he's like 1 or 2 fumbles away from being second on that depth chart. And I even think without that, Rashard Penny might take the job when he's healthy.
I think the big situation, and it depends on. I think Penny is on the active PUP, so he's not on the. I don't even know what it's called, but there's 2 different types of PUP. The regular pup is, you're not allowed to come back until week 6?
6, yep.
And then the active PUP, you can come off at any time. So that's good news that they are putting him on the active PUP, that they can activate him at literally any time.
He's probably going to miss at least the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, I would expect him to miss the first
4 weeks.
3-4 weeks. But so the question is, I feel like, yes, they brought in Carlos Hyde, but Carlos Hyde, I mean, he had the lead role in Houston last year and he just wasn't good. So
I don't
know. He wasn't bad, but he just
I know you don't like Carlos Hyde.
I really don't like Carlos Hyde. He's not a bad
5 yards a carry. Or no, he didn't. I'm tripping. He averaged 4.4 yards a carry.
Yeah. So he's not bad. He's a good role player and he's a good third down back. I think Chris Carson is probably going to get a majority of the work, similar to how he did in the early portion of the season last year. But you're very right. Carlos Hyde's going to have a role. Rashad Penny's going to come back and he's going to have a role. They drafted DJ Dallas. He's going to have probably a small role, but,
sure,
one
but
where he comes in.
I don't think he's going to be involved
that much. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think that there is an opportunity for him to, really take away from what Chris Carson is doing. I think that he has the opportunity to, have a really good start to the season, but it's really up to him. If he has a friggin' smashing start to the season where he's fantastic, then I don't think that it's going to be hard for Penny and DJ Dallas and all those guys to really take reps away from him. But I don't think he's going to do that. I totally agree with you. I think he's a bust for this season. It's going to be hard for him, especially when you talk about the amount of fumbles that this guy gets.
Right.
That's why Penny was getting the job. It wasn't because Penny was outperforming him on the ground. Because
Penny did play really well when he came in, though.
Oh, he did. He played fantastic when he came in. But this is just primed to be one of those backfields for Pete Carroll, where he just gives everyone work.
It's going to be annoying for Chris Carson.
Yeah, for Chris Carson, it's going to be really annoying. I'm not even
saying, I think he'll be solid, especially the first half of the season.
Yeah.
It's just when Penny comes in, I think it's going to be a mess. Yeah. And I'm not trying to take Chris Carson in the 3rd round, especially not the top of the 3rd round.
Okay. My running back bust is Aaron Jones.
Okay.
So this one comes with a lot of not hesitation, but confusion. I love Aaron Jones. I absolutely love Aaron Jones. This has in no way, this does not change my mind on the talent that is Aaron Jones, how good he is, the fact that he has 1 fantasy point per opportunity. This changes none of, me saying he's a bust literally has nothing to do with him on the field and his talent level. Okay. It has everything to do with their moron head coach not being able to figure out how to use a running back at all, and then going out and drafting another running back to add to 2 running backs who were just as fine last year. It was such a waste of time when Aaron Rodgers needed help at the receiver corps.
Yeah.
It's what are you doing? They don't know what to do. They have no idea how to deal with running backs. They were RBBC last year. That's becoming the trend in the NFL. There is probably 3 or 4 running backs left in the NFL that are just complete workhorses,
Sure.
I'll say 6 or 7, but I think for me, this is the thing with Aaron Jones. He had a 62 or 63% snap percentage last year. I owned him for parts of the season, and it was so friggin' difficult to own Aaron Jones because you didn't know who was getting the reps. It was either Jamal Williams, it was either Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones would come on the field, he'd get 20 carries, and the next game he'd get 10. And it's what was the expectation for Aaron Jones in that offense? I don't like that in terms of like, he was still good. He would get the red zone opportunities. So he had like a decent floor on a week to week basis. He wasn't inconsistent. It's just when I need those carries and I need those receptions, you have to provide them. And it's like, it's so hard when Aaron Jones was just off and on with that area because they want to go RBBC. They added A.J. Dillon, which I don't think is an impediment to Aaron Jones. I think it hurts Jamal Williams more, but they're going to use all three guys.
Sure.
So it's like, it's hard for me to believe that Aaron Jones is going to come out with his 60% snap percentage and be able to get the same amount of opportunities he had last year. I think he had 49 receptions and 240 something carries, something like that. So he was at 280 total opportunities, which is good. But I think for me, that is going to go down with A.J. Dillon coming in. I think it would be right around like 250, 260, which is still really good. He's not a bad running back to own, but the reason why I think he's going to bust is because normal average people who are not in the industry are going to go and they're going to draft Aaron Jones thinking that he's a top 3 running back
because he finished
as RB3 last year. And he's going to score, instead of scoring 19 touchdowns, he's going to score 10 or 11 or 12. And he's going to take his 60% snap share. It's going to turn into 250 carries. So not only is he getting less carries, but he's regressing in the touchdown category. And all of a sudden, Aaron Jones is going to end up a mid to low end RB2, and everyone's going to be like, oh, well, this is not what I drafted. Even in the second round, it's a little bit much for me. If he was a third round running back like he was, I guess, last year, early third round, I would be more comfortable with it.
For sure, yeah.
But just based on the fact that like right now on Sleeper and 12 team, he is going off the board at pick 12, between 12 to 15. And it's like he's just that's very, very high.
That's too early, yeah.
And it's like he's getting either drafted at his ceiling, or you know what I mean, he's just gonna bust and crap all over your team. I think there's better guys there. You know what I mean? I've talked about this before on Twitter. I had a conversation with some people about how I'd rather have, based on the ADP that I've been seeing from Sleeper, I would much rather have Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Aaron Jones. And that is just the reality of the fact. So he should be going at the end of the second, early third round, and he hasn't been in 12 teams. So that it's kind of scary that you're getting him in the middle to the early portion of the second round, and people expect him to be that breakout guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind Aaron Jones to play devil's advocate. Do you think he could get more receiving work? Because I do agree with you.
I don't think he's going to get more receiving
and the touchdown. Work. No. Did you say?
I think
he'll
get the same amount. He's probably going to get 49, 50 catches again.
But, okay, I think there's a chance he could get more. There's talks that he could play the slot, since their second wide receiver right now is Alan Lazard. So there's talk. I've heard some people say that they want to try to maybe throw him in the slot. If he can get up to like 80, 90 targets this year, then maybe.
Maybe he makes up that value.
Even if he does that, that's best case scenario. He's not getting 19 touchdowns. That number is going down to 10 or 11.
Which is still a lot. He's going to get all of the red zone work. They're gonna the same.
Is he gonna get goal line carries? I think it's gonna be A.J. Dillon.
No, I think it's gonna be Aaron Jones. He'll get the goal line carries. That was the one thing that held constant with him last year, that gave him good fantasy output, was that they were giving him all the goal line work.
I would be nervous about A.J. Dillon.
Yeah,
but
I'm less worried about A.J. Dillon than I think he's just a change of pace back at this point, but.
Oh yeah, I think in general he is, but
see, like I said, if he was a mid third round pick, I would be all over Aaron Jones. I would be sweating, you know what I mean, all day, all night.
He's a late third round pick for me. I'd probably be like that.
But yeah, so when you're drafted, essentially what people are doing right now is they're not drafting him at his ceiling. Like if he scores 19 touchdowns again, he defies odds, and
he does that, I will.
Yeah,
jump out a window. I don't think it's going to happen.
But seriously, if that does happen though, then that's his ceiling and you get that, and it's not a bad selection in the second round. The reality is that's probably not going to happen. It's just going to be 10 to 12 touchdowns. And even if he puts up the same numbers in terms of yardage and receptions last year, losing maybe, let's just say 9 touchdowns, you've literally lost 54 fantasy points total to your numbers from last year. And he was at, 233 and half PPR? So losing 50 fantasy points puts him at 180. I mean, that is all the way down past Miles Sanders at RB15 last year.
Yeah.
And it's like people don't really understand how much the touchdown and the touchdowns affected his fantasy point output last year.
Yeah.
It's like if he only scores 10 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, even 12 touchdowns, he is losing a massive chunk of fantasy work. I could see 200 fantasy points being where he ends up, which is still, RB 12, 13, 14, which is, not bad. But I really do think people are just going to be disappointed thoroughly with what Aaron Jones does. And some people are really like, oh, Aaron Jones at 2.7 is criminal. Like you should be taking him there. And I'm like, really? I mean, what is it? The RB 12, 13, 14? Like I just, for me, I mean, I think it's right where he is going to finish, like where he's getting drafted. But the thing that makes me uncomfortable with Aaron Jones is just, you don't want to draft. I don't feel like you need to draft players exactly where they're going to finish. Unless they're like the first round pick, like CMC or Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams or Saquon Barkley. Like, unless they're going to be the top, you got to draft them at their ceiling.
Okay.
But when you're talking about Aaron Jones, like I don't want to draft him where I think he's going to be. I want to get value out of it. And so there's just guys that I'd rather have over Aaron Jones, but I think he's going to bust this year.
That's a fair argument.
Unless you had anything else to
No. I think, like I said, I think that's a fair argument.
Let's move to wide receiver busts. Rick, what do you got at wide receiver?
I was tempted to go DeAndre Hopkins. But the thing with Hopkins is, like, I do think he's kind of a bust, but I still think he's going to be really, really good.
He's going to be a good bust.
Yeah, he's going to be a bust like Kamara last year. Dang it, I wish I picked somebody else, but he still ends up being like the 10th receiver or like a top 10 receiver. Right.
Or
like Kamara, who was, I think, the RB9 last year. Mm-hmm. So still solid. I'm going to go with T.Y. Hilton, who I don't think is going to be awful, but I really don't think he's going to be as good as people think he is. I mean, he's going the 5th round in sleeper right now. He's usually like the wide receiver, like 23, 24, 25. He's like mid to early 20s for receivers taken off boards in a lot of mock drafts that I've done. The reason I don't like T.Y. Hilton, for one, he's missed 8 games in the last 2 seasons, and he is kind of getting old. He's 31. I think he turns 31 this year. Mm-hmm. And he's already in training camp battling a hamstring injury, so not a great start. With Phillip Rivers there, Phillip Rivers tends to target the running back in the slot. He's done that last 5+ years with the Chargers, and it's not like he didn't have a good outside receiver. His outside receiver has been Mike Williams, who is a very, very talented player, but Phillip Rivers has just not been able to utilize him with his arm. So T.Y. Hilton's greatest strength is the vertical threat.
He does like to launch it down the field. It's just a matter of efficiency.
Can he get it there?
Yeah, he's not going to be able to get it there. Mike Williams proves that point.
I think, if Jacob, like for you dynasty people, if Jacob Eason ends up being the starting quarterback like next year, could be a good thing because he's got a big, strong arm.
Michael Pittman.
For this year with Phillip Rivers, I think Phillip Rivers is going to target the slot. So whoever plays that, whether it's Pierce Campbell, Zach Pascal, so one of those guys, I think, is going to have solid. Not that T.Y. Hilton's going to be bad. He's still he's going to be similar to Mike Williams. I think he might even be a little bit better than Mike Williams fantasy wise. But there's also a lot of mouths to feed with Michael Pittman there, obviously, who they drafted very high. Paris Campbell. They still got Jack Doyle. They now have Trey Burton. And with Phillip Rivers,
I don't think that those guys will take away from T.Y. Hilton. I just think T.Y. Hilton's going to be trash because Phillip Rivers can't throw 40 feet down the field.
He can't throw and Phillip Rivers threw 23 touchdown passes last year.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to throw that much more this year. Like maybe like 25, 26.
Yep.
So there's not a ton of passing touchdowns to go along there in that offense. So I don't think T.Y. Hilton, I think if you take him in the 5th round, there's just other wide receivers available there in that spot that are just better options. I mean, even like Cortland Sutton in the 7th round, who you got in your mock draft. Did you draft Cortland Sutton?
I did.
I think you did. Yeah. I would rather have Cortland Sutton than T.Y. Hilton. I'd rather have Devontae. I don't know if I know you're not the highest in Devontae Parker, but I'd rather have Devontae Parker than T.Y. Hilton.
No, I would too. Yeah.
There's some guys that are lower on boards.
I think running backs too. There's some guys that I'd just rather take over T.Y. I'm completely avoiding T.Y. Hilton, just in terms of like his ceiling is just so low in terms of what he can do, and I don't even think he provides a good floor. He literally is just he's a name, and that's people want to go after him.
Yep.
Because of the name.
I mean,
Same with AJ Green. I really don't expect much from AJ Green this year.
I'd rather have. I'm not even high on AJ Green at all.
And you'd rather
I'm not
have him
drafting
over
AJ
T.Y.
Green in any league, and I would much rather have AJ Green in redraft than T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah. Don't disagree with you there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Philip Rivers try to throw the ball down the field to T.Y.
Or just throw it to Paris Campbell and let my heart be happy.
It's going to be the Naheem Hines show.
True. My wide receiver, the final guy that we'll talk about on the busts running back and wide receiver show, my wide receiver bust for the 2020 season is Michael Evans. Now, I don't know if you agree with this, Rick. I think you do because it's in the draft guide. But anyway, Mike Evans is going to a team, or not going to a team. He's on a team where Tom Brady is now the new quarterback.
Sure.
And some have thought, so there's different sides to the argument with Mike Evans. I'm going to first say that I've watched the New England Patriots my entire freaking life. And since I was a wee lad, the first game I ever remember watching was the Super Bowl against the Rams in Super Bowl 36, which is not very long ago. Well, I guess
it's like 20 years ago.
20 years. I guess so. But that was when I was just a kid, and I watched Tom Brady for my entire life. So I don't know football without Tom Brady. I've seen him play the game. I've seen him throw long passes to Randy Moss. I've seen him do all of that. For the last 5 to 7 years, Tom Brady has not been able to connect with anyone that is talented that they throw at him on the outside. Literally anybody. And I don't care if Mike Evans is talented. I don't care if he's really good at football. I don't care if whatever you think about Mike Evans is there. I think that Tom Brady is going to try to throw it down the field to Mike Evans, and it's going to be more difficult for him than not to connect with him. I'm not saying Brady is bad at throwing deep passes. Everyone's like, oh, well, he's got the highest percentage in the NFL. You want to know why he does? Because he doesn't throw it down the field. Ever.
Yeah.
He just chooses not to do that. He would rather go with the safer play. That's why he doesn't throw 25 interceptions in a season, because he's going with the safer play. So there's going to be drops from Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to have some really good games. He's going to have some good situations. But he's not going to be Randy Moss. I'm sorry. He's just not going to be Randy Moss. And I know a lot of people's argument is Brady hasn't had a talent like Mike Evans since Randy Moss. And you might be right about that. I just think that the way Tom Brady plays the game is very, very different than how he played it when it was in 2007. Tom Brady was in his 20s. He was a slinger. He was able to get things done down the field like that. Now he plays a different game, and Mike Evans really doesn't fit into that game. Like I said, Mike Evans will have some good games, but I think that Chris Godwin and the running backs and Gronk are going to have more effective seasons than Mike Evans. I don't even think Gronk's going to be that good this year, but I feel like Mike Evans he'll probably get, would it be safe to say, like 110, 120 targets?
Yeah.
So he'll get that many targets. I think the efficiency will be a little bit down, and I think where you're drafting Mike Evans is not actually that bad, but we talked about on the last show, he was the 9th wide receiver off the board, and how he's getting drafted essentially in the top 10 right now, and top 10 among wide receivers. So, like, for me, I don't think Mike Evans can that is a very reasonable spot for him. Like, it's not like he can't finish as the number 9 wide receiver, but I think it's more likely that he finishes at 12, 13, or 14 than 9. Yeah. I would be more willing to take him in the 4th round and be excited about that pick than take him early 3rd. Maybe for some people are probably going to take him in the 2nd. So it's like, for me, I'm more willing to take Mike Evans if he falls further. But as of right now, he just kind of, like we were just talking about T.Y. Hilton. It's the same situation. Like, it's not that, like, literally T.Y. can't have success because Phillip can't throw the ball down the field. Brady can throw the ball down the field still. That's not a problem. Yeah. It's just he doesn't do it often. So maybe that changes in this offense. Maybe that,
Sure.
becomes something that he is more willing to do. And Mike Evans has a monster season and we're all wrong. But just knowing the way that Tom Brady plays the game and me watching him for 20 years of my life, I do not think Tom Brady is going to be targeting Evans heavily in this offense. Knowing him and how he is, the days of Wes Welker, the days of Julian Edelman, the days of Chris Godwin are coming. And the slot receivers are going to be targeted by Tom Brady, but these outside receivers are going to get little to no work. And I mean, when I say little to no work, I mean 100 to 120 targets. So Mike Evans will still have a good season, but I don't think it's going to be the season that you're anticipating. People are going to get I know a player in our league that is going to get hyped on Mike Evans. He is going to smoke all the Mike Evans weed. And he is going to take it in, and he's going to draft him, and then he's going to get blindsided when Mike Evans sucks. So I think Mike Evans is a fantastic player. I just don't think this system fits. I actually think Jameis Winston fit him a lot better than what Tom Brady's about to bring to the table.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean I'm saying the Bucs suck. Different style of play.
No, it's just different, right? I mean, Brady, he's going to, similar to Phillip Rivers, he likes to play the slot and the check down. Mm-hmm. And they're going to use the running back a lot in the passing game. Mike Evans will have big games though, and he'll have moments.
Yes, he'll have. How many 30-point games do you think he'll put up?
Maybe like 2-3. Like he'll put up a couple.
Yeah.
But similar to how you feel about Aaron Jones, like I actually do like Mike Evans. I don't think he's a complete bust. Like I would take him. It's just his ADP is a little high.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of people usually take him over Kenny Golladay, as well because of the name. But like I wouldn't do that. He's usually like end of the second round, which is it's just a little early for me for somebody who, exactly like you said, doesn't really fit the way Tom Brady plays quite like Chris Godwin does.
Right.
And similar to you, I've watched a lot of Patriots football in my life, so I get the argument of Brady hasn't had an outside guy since Randy Moss. That's like Mike Evans, but. I mean, he had Josh Gordon, who I
see. A lot of people would say Josh Gordon sucks when they bring that up, but I was going to bring up the same exact thing. Josh Gordon did not, especially when he first came to New England, he was not bad. And there was a talented player with a lot of problems.
Brady would just miss him deep, and wouldn't throw it to him often. Now there was moments where he did hit him. And like he had his moments in New England. Yeah. And I think Mike Evans is better than Josh Gordon. Don't get me wrong. So there'll be more of those moments. I just don't think it's going to be as efficient as a guy like Chris Godwin.
I think we also have to consider the Bruce Arians effect on the system, because Brady's not walking in and taking over the whole system and being like, this is what we ran in New England. This is what we're going to do here.
Right.
Arians is going to implement some of what he had with Jameis Winston, with a Brady flair on it, which is essentially what they've said. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of slot targets for Brady, and what you saw last year. And the biggest thing for Mike Evans, because of the way that he plays the game, because he's an outside receiver and relies so much on, longer, medium to long range routes that will allow him to score. He relies on those so much that I don't know if he's going to get enough opportunity to see to see success. Whereas Godwin, every second they get in the red zone, Godwin's going to do, a stutter step to the right, and all of a sudden he's in the end zone like Julian Edelman used to. I mean, what did he have? Julian Edelman had like 12 or more touchdowns last year. So I think Chris Godwin's going to definitely have a really, really great season, just because he fits better. And Mike Evans is going to be the odd man out of that wide receiver core. As far as busts are concerned, I mean, I'm not drafting him just because of that. If he was a 4th round pick, I'd be all over him. And I think for any player in fantasy football, that is the same. It's the same conversation. It's the reality of, a player being valued too much to where they're actually going to finish. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even like I'm starting to feel that with Monty a little bit, just knowing like how David Montgomery is going to perform this year and knowing what he is as a player and what round he's getting taken in. And it's just like, is it worth taking him there? There's other guys that I'd like. And that's the same thing with Mike Evans. I'm like, early second round. I mean, late second round, early third. Like, is that really worth the investment for Mike Evans? Are you going to get the return back? So, I've wasted too many draft picks on wide receivers in the second and third round, and I'm not going to do it this year with Mike Evans. We have a little segment that we're going to jump into called This or That. We're just going to have two players, and I changed it right before. But anyway, before we do that, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. Talked about it like for 100 episodes in a row. It's free, and you don't have to pay anything. We were paying a large fee every single month to host our podcast, and now we do not have that fee anymore, and it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone, so you don't need fancy equipment or material to make your podcast happen. You can literally just pick up your phone and record. Anchor will let you distribute your podcast for you. It's going to distribute your podcast for you so you can hear it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and all the massive platforms out there. And you can make money from your podcast with a no minimum listenership. So that should hook you right there. You get paid for your listens right away. It's everything you need to make. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app and go to anchor.fm to get started. Let's jump right into This or That and then finish the show. So I'm essentially, this is for teams. This is for two players on the same team, and whether or not, think about it in this context, it's whether or not you would take the higher player who's going in the earlier rounds, or would you want to wait and take a player maybe who might end up of the same value a little bit later in the draft? So let's start out with the first one. Would you take Juju in the 4th round or Deontay Johnson in the 8th?
The first one is pretty easy for me. I'll take Juju in the 4th.
Okay.
I already think that's insane value. No, not insane, but it's very, very good value for Juju in the 4th round for somebody.
Great
I think
value.
He's going to get like 155,
sponsored
160
by
targets.
Walmart, and there would be a great value button.
Great value, love it. That's my guy, honestly. Juju Smith-Schuster. So that one's easy for me.
To be honest, I hate Walmart, by the way, but the only slogan that fits.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot more tougher than I thought it was going to be. I would definitely take Juju.
You're a big Deontay Johnson guy, those too. So
I do like Deontay Johnson. I just think, here's the thing. I feel like if Big Ben is there and he's making plays and stuff like that, and Deontay Johnson is taking over the role of Antonio Brown on the outside, and Deontay Johnson gets like 120, 130 targets, and Juju gets like 150, 160. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is very possible. We know the Steelers throw the football a lot.
True.
So if something like that happens, are you getting better value in the later rounds with Deontay Johnson in the 8th if you miss out on Juju? Probably.
Yeah.
I would drop both of them. I'd be like, yeah, let's go. One of them's going to work.
I know you would love both of them.
But anyway, yeah, I would definitely take Juju because I think the upside is there. But I do think, I'll say this, Juju had 166 targets in his most targeted season, and he finished as the wide receiver 6 that season, or wide receiver 7 in half PPR. I think we've seen the ceiling for Juju in terms of if he adds a couple more touchdowns, he probably can finish top 5. But that's kind of the ceiling for Juju. I don't think he can become a top 3 wide receiver, whereas we haven't seen what Deontay Johnson can do yet. So he might be a player like Antonio Brown who just blows open the game a lot and ends up with huge performances and scores a lot of touchdowns, and he could be a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy football. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I would definitely take Juju because I think he has the higher upside, but Deontay Johnson in the 8th is really good value.
I will say Juju that year, he was the wide receiver 8, tied with Mike Evans. But if you put up those same numbers last year, he would have been the wide receiver 2.
Wow.
So that was just a really good year for wide receivers.
So the second one, and then we will conclude the show, is Mark Ingram in the 4th or J.K. Dobbins in the 8th.
This is actually, this is very hard. I'm actually going to go Dobbins in the 8th, just because I think if you look at where they're going in the 8th round, there's not really many guys who I'm trying to jump on.
Yeah.
Like the options around J.K. Dobbins aren't that great. Meanwhile, the options in the 4th are pretty solid.
Decent for Mark Ingram.
I mean, right, with Mark Ingram with our 4th. There's Juju, who we just talked about, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson's early 4th.
Yeah.
There's some Odells in the 4th who had all wide receivers, but I would all rather have over Mark Ingram. Even like David Montgomery, I think you can make the argument. I think I'd rather have David Montgomery over Mark Ingram, although that's close.
Yeah.
So there's some guys that
They're
I'd
the
just
same
rather
player.
have in the 4th round. Right.
You're not
and
kidding.
With J.K. Dobbins, there's not really that many guys in the 8th round that I'm trying to get anyway. So I'll take J.K. Dobbins here, even though I do think Mark Ingram is going to be the starting running back and will get the majority of the carries.
Yeah, Mark Ingram will probably finish with more fantasy points this year.
Right.
But I think the better value here is J.K. Dobbins. I think Mark Ingram, he's 30 years old, and I don't think he can put up, that
running back,
100 and what is it, 200 rushes in a season. Like, I don't think he can put that up anymore. You know what I mean?
I think it's possible. I mean, look, Adrian Peterson had 200 last year at 34 years old. So
I know. I mean, like efficiency wise and health wise. Yeah. I don't think they want to give Mark Ingram that many carries.
Right.
So I think Dobbins is coming in. There's a very specific reason why they drafted him in the 2nd round, and I really do think they're going to use him relatively immediately. And I have been bouncing back and forth on what I like. Last year, Gus Edwards had 133 carries on the season, and he had 800 rushing yards. I think with Lamar Jackson on their team, he's just absurd. He's ridiculous, and he opens up so much for the running game. And I think J.K. Dobbins is extremely talented. And I think that if you're telling me that Dobbins is like, if Gus Edwards can rush 130 times and get 800 yards, J.K. Dobbins can rush for 150 times and get 900 to 1,000 yards. I think it just comes down to, target share and how much he gets targeted in the passing game. But I definitely would take J.K. Dobbins because I think at some point he could definitely have a big, this could be one of those Miles Sanders like years where later in the season he kind of overtakes Ingram a little bit and starts to get more workload. I think the other thing you have to consider, J.K. Dobbins has the easiest running back schedule for the postseason of fantasy football.
That is an interesting.
So if he takes the job over, he's gonna have an easier schedule towards the back half. I mean, they have I think the Ravens have the easiest running back schedule in the NFL this year, or top 3 at least. But yeah, I think Dobbins is a way better value. I think what Ingram's going to start falling off this year. He's older and he's just not there anymore. I think this is it for Ingram. You could probably put him on the bust list, and be okay with that. But at this point, I think for me, it's J.K. Dobbins.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
all right,
I'm with you on it.
That will complete our Wednesday episode on August 12th. Don't forget to check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Be sure to buy our draft guide. Go comp the draft guide. Please buy it. Get entered into the Listener League. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, my friends.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at TheFFChamps.